everybody. Welcome to the Vox Podcast with Michael Erre and Timothy John Stafford, soon to be renamed, but none of you believe us, so it'll happen someday. When you least expect it, it will come like a thief in the night.
Wow, there you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank a couple of people who have joined the support wagon. I want to thank Karen and Lori and Stuart. I think Stuart is an old friend of mine from Mariners Church. And maybe these the Karen and Lori are too. I don't know. But anyway, it is such kindness that you do this and are willing to support us. It really is helpful and rewarding and allows us to do a whole heck of a lot. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Today, we're going to get Gombist. Now, some say there is such a thing as too much Gombis. We're not there yet.
Who says that?
I don't know, but I'm sure somebody somewhere is saying
His
that.
wife. He does talk about going on a little mini vacation while we're talking, and he said it's a gift to her that she gets a break from him.
Yes. But we're talking about, he wrote a book called Power and Weakness, and I really encourage you to, we're going to give away 7 copies. On when this episode comes out, go on Instagram or our Facebook page, the Vox Facebook page, and the first 7 people who are in vocational ministry.
Is it 7 because it's the holy number?
Yep, because that's how many copies he gave us, which maybe is because it's the holy number. But Tim Stafford is going to get your info. Mike Erre will mail you those books, and it will be glorious.
So the first 7 folks in vocational ministry, because it's a very helpful text for those who are.
It's super helpful for people not in vocational ministry in terms of evaluating leaders and churches. Yeah. Like, it is unbelievable, but particularly for those of us who wrestle with the dynamics of organization in a religious sense and have a vested interest in being professionally holy. So all that is to say, it's a great book. It is thick. It is Gombis. I mean, you're hearing Gombis talk when you're reading this thing.
True.
So it's not
an audiobook.
You're not just going to pick the thing up. He would be hilarious because he has such a unique way of emphasis.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like he'll totally emphasize the second syllable of the last word of a sentence. And there's just a rhythm to it. I love it. All that is to say, though, let us know. We think this is super helpful. And the conversation really is helpful for people. Yeah. Because, for most of us, not all, for most of us, church is still a live thing. We're still thinking about it, even if we're not going regularly. We still have hopes and dreams for it. Yeah. And had I, as a early 40-something several years ago, had believed and understood and practiced what he's got in here, I would just be a totally different person. And as he says, we're not picking on pastors. We are questioning the system in which pastoral ministry is done and what it values and prioritizes. Yeah. And so he does a really good job of calling some of that into question in a way that's invitational yet kind of ruthless.
Yeah, and it's not like it's an ejection seat. It's more of a, hey, we can do better at this. We can change this. It's
Paul, and he uses Paul. Paul had modes of ministry that are very similar to American modes of ministry. And then Paul met Jesus and reconfigured all of those.
Yeah.
And so he's asking the natural questions about, okay, how do you do image maintenance when you follow a crucified, shamed Savior? You know what I mean? So it's really, really good stuff. Tim, though, shockingly is troubled.
What?
Yep. Tim is troubled, and so, ladies and gentlemen, another edition, yet again, of Tim's Troubled Times.
Tim's Troubled Times.
Tim, what troubles you?
Man, I what troubles me is that I was texting my friend, and I'll just say that I'm sorry, Joey, because I text him too many videos and links of, especially there's a mega pastor in our area, and I think I've just been living so much in negative energy. Like, I just realized that I just like am constantly sending, but the aggressive, it was interesting to read Gombis's stuff because it relates so much to this aggressive so this other pastor
masculine
was
manifesting.
pastor.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that, and the reason that really troubles me is because he a lot of my students go to his church.
Young
and they're
life
being
students.
formed.
Or
my students at the
students.
college, and they're being formed by this aggressive theology that is ostracizing a lot of people, both theologically, but also like socially, like causes for people of color and causes for people who are being trying to choose all my words so carefully, people who are being ostracized by the church. And he's spewing this rhetoric from the pulpit all over social media, this we're not going to take it anymore attitude, riling up young minds to this like hateful theology. And it keeps me up at night, because I just keep going down the rabbit hole watching his sermons or Instagram rants, and it hurts my insides, and it's not healthy or productive, but man, does it rile me up. Reading Gombis' stuff and then the conversation that you guys are all about to listen to, just kind of, in a lot of ways, it feels that more, because you see Paul pick it apart, and then to watch it happening in real time and watching it affecting all these 20-something, 19, 20-year-old kids that I am working with, it's hard to, the path of humility, when the loudest voices aren't humble and, or preaching, there's no sense of humility, and they're not preaching from a place of service, but of domination. It's this war rhetoric. And the conversation of how to give wings to a counter narrative is so hard in this world. I want to present a counter narrative to my community, to my town, to my city, to these college students, to my children and my children's friends. And I want people to see the counter narrative of who Jesus is, and not this dominance, not this domineering theology of overtaking.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure that out.
Yes, because Paul certainly does go after other leaders, right? I mean, I think most famously of Peter. And in Galatians, like, that's kind of a big deal, and then he writes about it to the Galatians,
right?
Or he I mean, it's, but as Gombis talks about, there are social dynamics at play that Paul is calling out. So what we want to do, or at least what I want to do, is I want to call him out for being a jerk and what's our word? A ding dong and an asshat, and just for failing to represent Jesus at all in the way he's supposedly doing Jesus's work. And I think that there's a place for that, of course. But I think there's deeper social dynamics between churches and systems and platforms and authority that Gombis and Paul would also go after. You know what I mean? So in one sense, this person is a symptom of the rot. That yes, we can stamp out symptoms all over the place, but that doesn't go at what's really going on there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm with you, man. I can spend so much time feeding my cynicism. There's just so much. I mean, you just type in horrible pastors and and none of them are me. So, and then it's like, I got to show you guys how horrible this jackhead is. And, you're just like, yep. So yes, I join you in your trouble. I have to guard my cynicism. I have to guard that as a spiritual discipline. I do.
Yeah.
And, cause otherwise I'm just so with you in it's so
hard. It's so hard. The cynicism burns and it makes you, but like I said, like it's so hard to figure out how to crack that nut of the counter narrative. Like,
yeah,
if many of the churches up here in my area, not all, but a lot of, are really pushing this one version of Jesus that doesn't seem in any way cruciform, to use some terms that we will soon get into here, but it's all I've been thinking about lately, and it's driving me nuts. It's driving me bananas.
So
BANANAS.
So Tim's troubled times. We're troubled. And the great, I mean, I just think it's great that this ties exactly into what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because the counter narrative will never be as compelling as that narrative. It wasn't for Paul. Paul's letters to the Corinthians are a case study in, particularly 2 Corinthians. Here are the dynamic super apostles who are awesome. And Paul isn't. And he's losing his church to these. And so this, there is no counter narrative that can compete in the same terms. And right, because then we're just perpetuating the same cycles, just with a different righteous end.
Right.
And so the invitation, I think, is to, well, what happens if we have a 30-person little group that habituates themselves towards habits of newness, a new creation? Is that enough? Is that good? Is that impact?
Yeah.
Are those all the wrong questions?
Right. That's the thing that's been troubling me the most. Is that the right question? But then I talk to my students and I hear them say things and I'm like, maybe it is the right question. I don't know.
So Tim's troubled times leaves us unresolved.
Let's go get Gombis.
Is a good thing. Yes. So into this non-resolution steps, Gombis. Ladies and gentlemen, have we got a doozy today?
A doozy.
Yep. Doozy is 2 O's, and that's appropriate because there is an O crud factor to the material we are covering today. We need all the O's we can get. We are today with our friend Tim Gombis, Dr. Timothy G. Gombis. The G is for what?
George.
That's right. You done with TGG? Yes. And
we should just call him Dr. Gigi. That kind of has like a real sophisticated ring to it. Today with Dr. Gigi.
Well, and today he is full on doctor. He has a button down with a V-neck sweater over it, and he was wearing glasses.
This is as dressed up as it gets.
Yes, clean shaven. I mean, we have not seen the good doctor's face.
This is a big deal. I mean, I felt like I had to step it up, kind of come in here with you guys.
Just for today. I like that. And off air, Tim was telling us about how Mr. Gombis vacations.
My Vans on.
Oh, he's got Vans. Okay, cancels it out.
It's still casual.
It's 40 something hip is what we're looking at right now. And so off air, Tim was telling us how he vacations. And if you've been following our podcast, we've had Dr. Gombis is a bit of an onion in the sense that there are these layers that are totally unexpected. And so one of my personal favorite layers that we have referenced multiple times is that he goes to bed around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, wakes up at 2 or 3, goes for a 2-hour, 10-mile walk to just think, comes home, eats a breakfast, and then goes on with his day. And so he just told us he was on vacation.
That's a rough sketch.
And it is a rough sketch for those of us who lack that sort of focus. He told us he was just on vacation. We said, "Oh, where did you go?" And Dr. Gombis says,
Tucson.
"Why?"
I didn't tell anybody.
Okay.
So this is like, it's just you two guys are the only ones that know, and my wife. That's it. And a couple of friends. I didn't tell anybody.
Now a few others.
Did you take your wife?
No.
What did you do?
She had a vacation from my presence. I just, I love West Michigan. I love it here. I love living here.
But
for 1,000 reasons.
But
in about late February, early March, I have to leave. I got to get out of here.
You gotta.
And all the beautiful snow is like brown and gray.
Yeah.
It's just ugly. It's gross.
Yeah.
And the last 3 years I've had this really great place out in Phoenix, the Missional Training Center. I've taught for them a couple times in March, and the other times I've just gone out there by myself to watch spring training baseball. And this year I wasn't lined up to teach, but also it was a little bit harder to get tickets. But I just thought I got to go to the desert. I'm out of here. So I just went to I've never been to Tucson. I thought I would just check it out. And I was there for like 8 days. I took walks. I had good Mexican food, and that's about it. I mean, just walk and eat and read. I read out in the sun for a while. Read a couple of like excellent books and just chilled out.
This is by yourself.
Yeah.
This is what time were the walks as early as they are in Michigan? Were they that early? Because it's up on the plateau, right? Of 3:30.
Yeah, about 3:30. I go out, and it's a little. I mean, I know my area, so it's all good. But like when you're out at 3:30 in Tucson, it's like that's a lot of coyotes. Like,
yes.
It's quiet and it's freaky. I mean, the noises are just very different, and it's in a big valley, so it's like you hear all these distant animals. And the people I stayed with said there were like packs of javelina around, and it's like, I don't know, it just kind of gets your attention.
I like it. I love it.
Well, so you were with people though.
Well, I mean, I stayed at an Airbnb.
Okay.
I didn't talk to him very much though.
No, of course not.
Limited social interaction is my way to go. Tim knows what I'm talking about.
I got you.
Totally.
I was gonna say we can go vacation together because I won't talk to you the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly okay with it.
Yeah. What's there to say? Nothing to say.
All I do all day long is say.
Yeah. All you got to talk about is like, all right, what's the second best Mexican place? Because we went to the first one last night.
Yesterday. Yeah.
Let's go sit there and chill out.
Yeah.
Don't talk.
I do that in Joshua Tree. I was going out to Joshua Tree and you can camp out there and it's dead quiet. There's no light pollution. And you're in like weird Dr. Seuss territory with the trees. It's like everything's an alien landscape. It's beautiful.
That's so cool.
Yeah, you guys are early in the morning. Abnormal.
A lot of stars, and you can watch. I saw a shooting star. Hear the coyotes. It's just interesting experience.
I don't think I've ever gotten up at 3:30. I think I've just stayed up to embrace 3:30, but I don't think I ever fell asleep before that and said, "Oh, 3:30 seems like a good time to wake up." Right now,
I feel like 9 o'clock, 9:30 comes. I'm like, the day's over. I'm done. And I just want it to end, and I wake up with a fresh mind early in the morning, and you've got hours to just read and quiet. I love it.
Yeah. So we've probably gone far too long, but it just fits the pattern of life that we've observed in our friend Tim, and it's perfect. It just, of course, we're going to Tucson at 3:30 in the morning, and we're walking with the coyotes. Of course we are. Of course we're not talking to anybody. We're going to Mexican by ourselves, probably reading while we're eating or not.
Yeah.
And just loving it. Loving it.
Best. The best.
Did you call anybody while you were away?
May have had a conversation with a friend.
Okay.
Texted a little bit with my
exhausting.
Wife.
Sounds exhausting.
It's like, I think I texted with my son. I didn't want to tell. I told my kids where I was. but that's about it. Like
Just
nobody
in
needs
case you
to
got
know.
eaten by coyotes.
Yeah, in case
We
someone
never
finds
know.
my carcass, on a lonely canyon road.
There's just a beard and a Cubs cap just sitting there.
Yeah. How do we explain this?
So Timothy has written a book that we've covered bits and pieces of this, but my goodness, the book is called Power in Weakness, and it's Paul's transformed vision for ministry. And it is, to use a word, a doozy of a book. It is it simply calls into question the entire orientation of pastoral ministry and church in the Western world by simply pointing out the way Paul did things. and it's the exact opposite of everything that we value, do, structure in America. And so it is incredibly beautiful and incredibly challenging. And if you are in vocational church work, or if you're a pastor or a teacher or whatever, I so highly recommend this. We're going to do some giveaways at the end of the episode. And so we'll send out some free copies, but my goodness, it's wonderful. And any excuse to talk to Tim as he's unshorn, dressed up, and fully rejuvenated from his exile in the desert is a good day. So Tim, I've called you Timothy, I've called you Doctor, I've called you Dr. Tim, and Dr. Gombis, Dr. G, Dr. Gigi. I appreciate all of these informalities. You're
very welcome.
What were you seeing out in the church in pastoral ministry that caused you to find this an interesting topic?
Man, that's a great question. I think that I got to think about that. I think that I was noticing a number of destructive dynamics that were at work in pastors and in pastoral situations. And I try not to ever blame pastors or go at pastors, because I'm not a pastor. I've been in a variety of pastoral sort of positions and roles, but man, I couldn't do it. I know what it takes and I know how taxing it is, and I really couldn't do it. But I think the problem is the structure, the structures of pastoral ministry elicit from pastors a lot of destructive dynamics and impose on pastors a lot of destructive dynamics. It's, and it's like pastors are these great people that get into ministry, many of them. There are a handful of sociopaths out there, but pastors get into ministry because they love God and they love God's people, but the structures just become very oppressive. And I think what I was seeing was years and years ago, everyday Christians could flourish and were called to flourishing and called to be, loving and participate fruitfully in community. But it seemed to come at such a great cost to pastors' marriages, pastors' spouses, pastors' kids. It's like there's almost like this sacrifice that has to be paid for pastors to really thrive and serve their churches well. And that's terrible. That's a sign that something's wrong.
Right.
If there has to be sacrificial lambs for churches to flourish. I remember this is just years ago. I just thought something's wrong with this, and I don't know what it is. I can't get at it. And then seeing how a long time ago, so probably 25, 23 years ago, I remember coming across that passage where Jesus is talking to his disciples about what leadership is like in the church, or, if anybody wants to be the greatest, to be the least. And then Jesus is talking about how you see how the leaders of the Gentiles do what they do. They lord it over people they rule over, but it should not be this way among you. And I just, that contrast was so striking to me. Leadership among God's people should be completely different from how it is in the wider world. Okay. Just that thought. And
Yeah,
then
that thought, I'm sorry to interrupt you, goes against everything I was taught growing up in megachurch
yes,
land.
I was going to say, like, it's like you go into the resource shop for pastoral ministry, and it's like basically business leadership principles with, illustrations from the Gospels or something like that. And
Because
it's like,
they would say leadership's leadership. It doesn't matter if it's sacred or secular.
Totally. And it's and
so why is that wrong?
Then I saw how that worked out. So I would see pastors when I was an intern at like a mega church back in the 90s, and I saw behind the scenes of like how pastors enjoyed privileges and how like the role of money in a mega church and really churches of any size, money is always an issue.
Yeah.
And how pastors ended up talking about people, sort of evaluating people with regard to how much social prestige or financial power they had. And it was like inevitable because the structure invited us all to evaluate people according to those standards. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, James has stuff to say about this.
Yeah.
Jesus has stuff to say about this, and it directly contradicts everything that we're talking about. So I kind of started to see the role that power played, the role that prestige played, seeing competition on a ministry staff, people being destructively competitive with each other, and just realizing there's a lot of, ministry envy and ministry jealousy and church envy and church jealousy toward that church across town. And the feeling that when things are going well in that ministry, I'm hurting. That's hurting me. That's a strike at me. Or when things are going well in that church, then it's like comes at a cost to me. And I just thought there's all kinds of corrupted values that are going on here. Like, what's the deal? So over the last 20 years or so, getting more and more of a grip on the dynamics in Paul and how he carried out his ministry, it's like his vision and his practice is so subversive to the way that we have fallen into doing things.
Yeah.
And then seeing that, like, there was a time before his conversion where he actually did have a ministry mode that was shaped by his cultural context of power, prestige, and all that kind of stuff, which that's what, and N.T. Wright helped me see that in his book, What St. Paul Really Said. And the light turned on. I just thought, my goodness, we have fallen into a mode of doing ministry that matches perfectly with Paul before his conversion. Like, and that's a problem.
Right.
That's a major problem.
Right. And so the first, 3 chapters or so deal with that conversion of not just Paul's, recognition of who Jesus is, but Paul's recognition of resurrection and calling and vocation and all those sorts of things, even sinner, what it means to be a sinner. So how would you briefly characterize Paul's mode of ministry before his conversion?
Yeah, what's interesting is that his ultimate goal was the same.
Yes.
So he wanted, that was going to be the focus of the book when I first started out, was just resurrection. His whole aim as a Pharisee was to bring about resurrection life on earth, which is the blessing and flourishing presence of God among God's people. But he was trying to do it through coercion of God's people, trying to coerce them into adopting what he envisioned as like a godly way of following Torah. And that was all in an effort to sort of so impress God with his own efforts, but also by producing a people zealous for Torah, that God would actually bring about resurrection realities on earth, like restore Israel, bring salvation as Paul then understood it, and all that kind of stuff. And he talks about in Galatians how he was advancing in Judaism, which he means a zealous form of Judaism, far beyond all his contemporaries. So like he's in competition with his fellow ministers. He's using verbal violence, actual physical violence as well, which you don't see a lot of in our churches, but probably sometimes. And that reflects, I have seen pastors berate congregations and shame them or like cajole them or coerce them or condemn them, or pastors or people in ministry condemn or coerce, individuals just in an effort to sort of try to produce the kind of church that they feel would genuinely be pleasing to God. And Paul is also wrapped up in pursuit of credentials, which he talks about in Philippians 3, trying to kind of orient and create a sort of earthly social image that would so impress people that people would think that he's this godly person, hoping that that's the same way that, that would be the same opinion God would have when he met God on the day of the Lord,
right?
To establish a claim for personal participation in resurrection.
Right.
I think
and the problem in Paul's mind, keeping Israel from resurrection, more broadly conceived than just life after death, but restoration and national significance. And the problem was Israel was filled with sinners.
Yes. Yeah, totally. There's fellow Israelites who are not zealous for Torah the way Paul was.
Right.
Fellow Israelites who had grown lax in Torah observance, and people who are not as committed to God and God's glory as he was. And they are the problem. And Jesus became a problem. In fact, during Jesus' earthly ministry, I think it's very likely that Paul is actually among a group of Pharisees that are like checking him out, listening in on what he's all about, probably suspending judgment as far as, is he a genuine agent of national renewal from God? He probably suspended his judgment until Jesus is hung on a cross. I mean, and then Deuteronomy 21 comes to his mind, and he knows that God's verdict is cursed is everyone who's hung on a tree. So obviously this person's cursed by God.
Yeah.
And the early Christian movement is basically expanding the number of sinners in Israel, further preventing God from bringing about salvation. So yeah, his opinion about Jesus is that, and Christians, is that they are sinners and high-handed sinners against the one true God for what they're doing, following this person that God has cursed.
Right.
So when he actually sees the exalted Jesus on the throne, like the radical reversal in his imagination must have been absolutely profound, because like you can just see all the things fall into place. Like this person whom he had evaluated as a sinner, according to the Bible's clear teaching. I mean, it's so obvious.
Right.
Somehow God had vindicated the claims of Jesus and basically said, the one who's at the center of the work of God in the world is this person that Paul's own way of life had condemned as a sinner. So Paul's whole pursuit, he's got to call into question. His whole mode of trying to produce on earth God's blessings, that whole thing has to be called into question. Human effort, coercing other humans, coercing God, violence, force, anger, frustration with people, competition, all of those things. Yes.
Yeah.
All that has to be called into question.
Right. And so, and one of the things you draw out that I love is how Paul goes from defining himself over and against sinners to being foremost among them and sharing in their low status claims. Right.
Yeah.
He's a slave of the gospel. Which I find super, super fascinating.
Yeah, totally. It's like if the one who is Lord of all was hung on a tree, was a shamed, bloodied, disrobed corpse hanging on a tree, was shamed and ostracized and died alone, rejected by everybody, then you are a person's claim to be a faithful servant of that figure has to have a life that matches that kind of life. So Paul sees that ornamenting his life with impressive credentials, impressive social credentials, keeps him, distances himself from the exalted Lord. So he's got to, or it's his privilege, to ornament his life with the credentials of shame. So him being in prison puts him one step closer to Jesus. Right. Him having incarcerated person on his resume puts him closer to Jesus and closer to the resurrection power that Jesus's presence brings. So yeah, it's really, I honestly, I knew that I would find a number of socially shameful identity markers in Paul's letters, but I was even over the last like year or two when I was doing that, I was really shocked.
Yeah.
Like, being a wet nurse, being a mother in labor, being a nursing mother, it's really incredible how he pictures himself, how he postures himself and his apostleship. When I had heard my whole life, authority, apostolic authority.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's this high flying status. Whereas for him, he takes all kinds of pains to put himself in the lowest possible social location. So
right.
There's a lot of projection of our own hopes in the ways that we talk about Paul, which is really tragic.
No, it's so true. And the way he makes himself peer to his ministry partners, whereas before his conversion, he would never have done that.
Yeah, totally. Again, it's really surprising to go through the letters and to find the many places where it's Paul and Timothy and Epaphroditus writing this letter.
Yeah.
And we forget about his colleagues, but he's always thinking in terms of colleagues and always writing these letters as like group projects, situating himself alongside his partners. And it's not like they're Paul's ministry team and he's the senior pastor. It's, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, really,
totally.
There's no difference between him and Apollos and Epaphroditus and Silas and Timothy and Titus. They're all partners, and they're all co-servants, co-slaves, co-laborers, co-soldiers.
Yeah.
All the language is partnership. Whereas before his conversion, he is outstripping all his contemporaries. I mean, he's wrapped up in that pursuit of competition.
Right. And it's funny that he lets us in on how good he would have been had he continued playing that game. You know what I mean? Like we get a little gift of his resume, and it's pretty tight.
Seriously, there's nobody who would be somebody who is like the inner circle of the inner circle. I mean, he had built the most impressive resume, and it's crazy that in that passage in Philippians 3, once he comes to see that the whole thing is about becoming associated with this utterly socially shameful person, that's why he says he regards all of that as loss, and he regards it as crap. Like, it's too bad our translations are not more explicit. It's like I regard all that as waste, like literally human waste. All
say
those
the word. Say it.
Dookie.
It's a Dr. Gigi translation.
Yes, the Gombis version, Gombis standard version. And so we begin the book by saying, there are these glaring issues, and Paul interestingly faced these same social pressures, and you can see that in comparing his before and after. How would you? Well, I know how you would, but explain what you mean by cruciform, because you characterize Paul's ministry as cruciform after his conversion. What do you mean by that? What's that look like?
Yeah, so it's such a great word, but so Jesus's life is a life of, I think Michael Gorman talks about this best with reference to Philippians 2:6-11. So Jesus, having all privileges from eternity past, did not exploit those for his own gain, but rather self-emptied, like poured himself out. It doesn't mean, emptied himself of being God. That whole thing is a false path. He expends himself. He spends himself, becomes incarnate, goes to the absolute lowest place of total social shame, and dies on the cross. And so his life is a life of recognizing privilege, not exploiting privilege, but self-expenditure toward and in the direction of the cross.
Yeah.
And so when Paul talks about his own life in chapter 3 of Philippians, he talks about his life of recognizing all his privileges, recognizing that they're all crap, and that they are keeping him from identifying with the life pursuit of Christ, which is to be having a life shaped by the cross, or in the form of the cross, or completely claimed by the cross and shaped by the cross and having the values of the cross. So, yeah, cruciformity is one of these realities that is a delight to think about, because one of the features of cruciformity is that verses 6-8 of Philippians 2 is followed by verses 9-11, which has everything to do with, because Jesus lived that kind of life, God highly exalted him. So the pathway to exaltation with Christ on the day of Christ is a life formed by and shaped by the cross. And also in 2 Corinthians 4, Paul talks about how he says we daily have our lives, we carry about daily the dying of Jesus so that we might experience the life of Jesus in our bodies. So God's presence, his resurrection presence in Christ, is actually located on earth in spaces where lives and communities are cruciform.
Okay, now that we have to stop here and add exclamation points. Because
that's the secret. That's
right.
the secret. Because what we imagine is the enjoyment of resurrection power and resurrection presence are places where there are comfort and prestige and power and what we imagine as power, or what we imagine as attractiveness and all that kind of stuff. But in Paul's theology, earthly power drives away God's resurrection presence, but earthly weakness and service and cruciform community practices invite God's resurrection power among us. And that's the only way that it is experienced. So God only pours out resurrection power where there are lives shaped by the cross.
Oh, that is such a big deal.
It's so upside down.
It is so upside down. Marva Dawn, one of my favorite books ever on weakness and tabernacling.
Love it.
Talks about God has need of our strength, or God has no need of our strength, but needs our weakness, because that's where he tabernacles, right?
Yeah.
That's where Paul boasts. That's where Christ's presence is found, which is totally revolutionary.
Yeah.
How does that? Let's pull forward just a little bit to say, okay, so what does cruciformity look like? Contemporary ministry dynamics. So for me, I come into a mega church full of ego and giftedness and woundedness. And I'm in this mix where certain gifts are exalted and size churches matter. And you treat the staff as your employees. Some are high performing, some are low performing. You have budgets and finance committees, and giving absolutely matters, because giving allows you to accomplish a vision. I'm evaluated based on my performance, right? I mean, this is my world, and I flourish in that world. I love this. I'm an achiever and performer. Give that to me all day.
Wow.
Because I can hide behind my competence, right, and not deal with my shame. Or if I fail, then I can just run into my shame story, which is where I'm most safe or most familiar. And I mean, it was just beautiful. And so I'm sitting there, and there's nothing in there about self-expenditure. You need a platform. You need an audience. You preach on your books. When you have a book come out, make sure to preach on the book you've just written from the platform. Right? I mean, it's just that whole machinery is the machinery of death.
Yeah. I think that's what we've got to do, is keep that reality before you, that all that stuff that feels so good is really the way of death.
So what's cruciformity look like in comparison to that?
Cultivation of authenticity. The cross will want to claim, it'll want to claim everything that we regard as strength. So personal strengths, which you will typically call upon to cover over your weakness.
Totally.
Cover over any kind of shame.
It's Strength Finder, Tim. It's not Weakness Finder.
That's right. Dude, that's the next book.
Weakness Finder? Weakness
Finder. I got to write that down. I can exploit that and go big.
Yes. Let me build a platform using my weakness. It's beautiful.
It's genius.
That's going to be the one. Yeah, I'm trying to play with titles even as I speak here.
Well, I'm just trying to contrast. How do you build a church on the cruciform vision? What are some of the dynamics you embrace in contrast to the ones I was just mentioning?
I would. I think that this would be a great thing to do. Like if I was on a ministry team or like a leadership board or a pastoral staff or a head pastor. I mean, these ways of structuring that just come right out of, corporations. I think it'd be a great thing to imagine, spend a Saturday and whiteboard it and talk about what Cruciform Ministry would actually look like. And then kind of talk about what are the challenges in the way that our organization is structured that keep us from doing that. Mm-hmm. And even sort of sketch a cruciform ministry and pay very close attention to our own thoughts. Because I don't think we attend to our own like bodies and thoughts and hearts as we have these discussions to really let our objections arise. Mm-hmm. What kind of arguments would we use why we couldn't do that in our structure? Right. Because I do believe that while many people that get into ministry are completely well motivated, the structure locks us in. Like if you have a large church, and I'm talking like 300 to 500 people, those are big churches. They become organizations. Typically you've got a building or you've got a budget, you've got payroll, mm-hmm. Got insurance plans for staff. You've got youth pastors who've got loans to pay off for going to Bible college. And totally. We're so locked in. Money has us by the short and curlies, and it's hard for an organization to really flex into something that is service oriented. So I think it'd be great to just completely throw out ridiculous ideas that would seem so threatening, because the cross is the most threatening reality in the universe, because it calls us to just complete loss. So what's keeping the pastoral staff from all getting full-time jobs and going to bivocational ministry? Mm-hmm. Because that would liberate the staff to really love the church and not do it because it's their job. I think it'd be great to have those kind of questions. What's keeping our church from, instead of having every other week, we just have a sharing time where we all talk about how our week was, and we spent, instead of like a performance or like a music show or a lecture, mm-hmm. we just do something different. We change it up. What's keeping our community from doing, couple months of investigation to find out what are the needs and desires of the people in the community that are the bottom quarter as far as income goes, like in the surrounding, 3 miles of our church building, 3-mile radius. What's the bottom quarter income, and what are their lives like? Yeah. And how can we be a community that attends to them? Right. Like, why wouldn't we want to do that? What are the reasons why we wouldn't do that stuff? And I think that the reasons why would typically revolve around money, and would typically revolve around wanting to have a kind of a community life or a kind of a community image that would draw people in to sort of increase our community's prestige. And I think that those would be the kinds of things that we should see, that the cross wants to claim those very desires. The cross wants to claim that and reconfigure it, and give them all back to us in a way that actually generate the dynamics of life among us rather than the dynamics of death. So, I think there's a lot of creativity. I think also a lot of our, I think a lot of staffs should engage in discussions like this, but also realize that whenever, when church communities make immediate pivots, that's not always the best move to make. Right. when a big community sort of turns on a dime, people can get hurt. So, I mean, I think we have to make changes wisely. But if at the day of Christ, the person that's going to be examining us was a person socially shamed and homeless, what does that say about our lives that are marked by prestige and comfort? Right. I mean, that's it's worth it to do.
Yeah.
It's worth it. And then not only that, I think it's worth thinking about. I mean, I've been a part of a community like this before. It's so liberating to be outside of like a high performance model where like Sundays or Saturday night, are just for me, we're always the climax of anxiety, because it's like that's where you've got to. Dude,
that's so true.
Both of you guys know how this is, where it's like, how you're being examined, you're being looked at, and you've got to keep the image up one more performance, and just
so poisonous.
Yeah, you've got to look like you have it together, and you've got to come off well, and you hope that on that Sunday your kid does not have a meltdown, or somebody doesn't ask a tough question about how things have been at home that week, because you can't show weakness. You can't show cracks in the performance. But it's so liberating to be part of a model where it's like, I'm not getting paid for this. If things didn't come together this week, I think instead of a sermon, we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to read a chapter of this passage, and let's just have some thoughts that we share on it for 15 minutes. Then I'm going to pray and we're done.
Yeah.
Because this week was crazy for me. Sorry. Yeah. So church could actually function according to its dominant metaphor in the New Testament, which is family. It's a family meeting. It's a family meal. But we've turned it into a production that's got to come off well, and I mean, in a media slick era where we've been for the last 75, 80 years, that's a lot of pressure for people who don't do this full time, and people that don't have the mega budgets to do nips and tucks and have
the nips and the tucks, the spiritual nips and tucks. You talked a lot about, I was trying to find the section, but I couldn't find it, with Paul continually leaning into like both the theological and the social implications of both being a sinner. And it's interesting that since we just finished Sermon on the Mount and Jesus was just turning everything upside down with how the church was operating then, to watch the same things happen in Paul from it's a different perspective, but it's a similar it's like a more embodied personal transformation to what Jesus was doing. So it's really interesting to watch that personified, I guess. I'm curious, so you talk about it's hard for the church to turn on a dime, for pastors to kind of embody this. While you are in a position of teaching future pastors, are you is this how does this implement itself into what does that question make sense?
Yeah, totally. I always have to sort of check myself. I just wonder if our admissions people know what I'm actually saying in classes. No, they do.
He did. Noted that Tim looked over his shoulder before he answered this question.
I love it. We have I love our community here. Obviously, the things are promoted according to the ideological climate of our time, but I encourage students to consider bivocational ministries, and to think about, to notice very carefully the dynamics that are up and running in the larger culture that draw us all into a career kind of a mindset. Yeah. I encourage our students not to think in terms of career mobility, and to recognize the ways that American dreamism has taken over ministry conceptions. So it's starter job,
totally.
Desirable job, and then dream job. And it's we think about church ministry positions in the very same way, like youth pastor, associate pastor, senior pastor.
Yes.
But these are idolatrous conceptions that are just really destructive. They come out of capitalism and liberal democracy. They don't come out of the vision of life in Scripture. So I think it's important to talk about all these realities. because you can't teach Paul without them, and you can't talk about them without.
Dude, Paul just all Paul cares about is getting us into heaven. So I don't know what you're talking about. Gombis.
That's right. It's all about the spirit, not about the body, not about the social body.
Yes.
Yeah. Ernst Käsemann has this great quote that I'll get wrong right now, but he talked about how the history of the study of Paul is the story of the church's domestication of the apostle.
Ooh.
Like we've made him into one of us. We've made him into someone who just endorses everything that we say. We've already adopted the mode of life, and then we use Bible. We fit Bible into that conception. We don't really let Jesus and Paul and the rest of the biblical writers reconfigure and unsettle stuff.
Yeah.
But that's part of the challenge of being in a seminary, is that we are servants to the church. But really, a seminary is it's an organization of the world that plays by the rules of the world. Like in terms of, it's got to be financially viable. Like we have to stay afloat. So, but what I love about being at GRTS is that my colleagues and I are committed, and our administration backs us up, which is very unusual. But we're committed to just speaking absolutely truthfully about all these realities, and the payoff is like a really life-giving environment, where we, although it's like, we try to be very honest about all that. We're invested in the world and the financial model of the world, which is,
and your credentialing.
We're hypocrites. We just don't want pastors to be.
Yeah. But you're credentialing in a world.
So nice of you to carry that burden.
That values credentials.
Our gift to the world.
You have, we're all twisted into this. There's no one stands above it.
Yeah, totally. So like, I can't be here at the seminary without having a PhD. Like that's the credential that gets me in the door.
Right.
But we talk all the time about like collegiality on our faculty. We just had one of our colleagues who is a staff member, not a faculty person, is leaving to take another job. And it's like the community has this ethos where the lines between faculty and staff are blurred. Like we're all friends and colleagues. And the lines are intentionally blurred really between like faculty and students, where we see ourselves as co-participants in the process of gaining biblical wisdom and ministry skill. Like we're all co-participants. So a lot of us, my colleagues who are white men, especially, we're very purposeful about calling ourselves by our first names. So,
and not doctor, not professor.
Yeah. And I don't have any of my degrees on my walls, because my, the way that I posture myself socially around here is to indicate that I'm a partner. I'm a partner with the people who are students here. And I talk a lot about my fellow students and not like my students, as if I'm like this sage on the stage. But I have to say, alternatively, because our social environments put us each in different places, the ideologies that American evangelicalism have fallen into naturally center you guys and center me as white men. And it's no problem for me to be around here as a white man. The seminary was made for me to just feel completely at home. But it's a very different reality for my colleagues who are black men, and for women of color, and for women, and for white women. And so like when I refer to my colleagues who are people of color, I routinely call them by their titles, because because the social situation displaces them at the center, I intentionally try to place them at the center. And I, encourage students to call them by their titles, to give them, to pay them that respect that culture doesn't give them. So I think being very aware of how culture values each of us in our embodied realities will configure for us how we look at each other and treat each other in a cross-shaped manner. Because the cross is always bringing low, and this is what Mary says, the high are being brought low and the low are being elevated. And that's not to like reverse social locations so that they get vengeance. It's to bring us to places where we are partners. So the question in kingdom communities is always, how do we embody being partners So in churches, can you really have titles of elevation over each other?
Right.
If Paul, the great apostle, only has co-laborers, how in churches can we have dynamics of elevation?
Right. Oh, but
I think that's just something that we really need to revisit.
Yes. Staff versus lay leaders.
Yeah, or
Sacred,
senior pastor,
senior,
executive pastor,
Totally.
associate.
Right.
No,
it's all true. All true. A couple more things, Tim, before we close. One is one of the very interesting points that you bring out is that Paul situates the church in cosmically contested space, and that when we choose as pastors to engage in ministry modes that are not cruciform, there's a bigger cost for that than just our institutions being unhealthy.
Oh yeah,
I'd love to hear more along those lines.
Yeah, this was like, I thought this was the biggest challenge to kind of pull off in writing, because it's like, it's so foreign to our way of thinking. But in Paul's view of reality, he only thinks in terms of cosmic reality. So he's always looking at community life in terms of the larger cosmic drama that's unfolding. And for Paul, we're stuck here in the present evil age. And after Adam and Eve sinned, these cosmic entities, sin and death and Satan and flesh, they all kind of hijacked God's good world and hold it enslaved. And these cosmic powers like completely had a lockdown, enslaving grip on all of creation, ensuring that humans walked in ways of death before Christ came. And those were manifest in like power seeking, selfishness, hoarding, oppressing, violence, hierarchies, racism, sexism, everything, all the ways of life that are degrading and that ruin human life and prevent us from experiencing God's order of flourishing. At the cross, God breaks their enslaving grip over his world and liberates humans and forms these communities that are not enslaved to these cosmic entities, but are filled with this new cosmic presence by the Holy Spirit that is the resurrection presence and power of God in Christ. And so Paul sees that it's absolutely critical for church communities to have lives and practices shaped by the cross. So service, hospitality, love for one another, denying ourselves, receiving the good gifts that other people have to give us, and functioning in communities as gifts to one another, not elevating ourselves over others, not oppressing, not excluding. And when we behave in these ways, and when we don't seek power or prestige or elevation, it's like we are stirring up among us the resurrection presence and power of God, which brings healing to all of us and which binds us together more strongly. It's like our community lives are filled with like the kerosene air of God's Holy Spirit. And we're all like, lighting matches, or like, sparks fly whenever we do acts of charity and love, and they just explode the air that surrounds us all, so that it's actually, that's maybe a bad metaphor, but it's not destructive. We don't get our hair singed off. It results in blessing. But when we actually gossip or exclude or oppress or seek our own, or even when we think that we're bringing about something good in the community and we do it through power or force, we drive away God's resurrection presence, and we actually become tools in the hands of the powers of sin and death to destroy God's community. And which is interesting because Paul talks about this in Galatians. I don't know if I mentioned this in the book, but he talks about his former pursuit made him an enemy of God. And when we participate in our church communities through force or self-seeking or elevating our agenda over others, especially if we think that it's like a godly agenda, we become enemies of God. Like our ministry participation modes are everything, not the ends. The ends are not everything. because we will all say that we're trying to bring about God's purposes, but our ministry mode always has to be shaped by the cross. And that's tricky because we will always tell ourselves we're just trying to bring about God's best in other people's lives. You know what I mean? Like if I was talking with somebody this last week, if I really love them, I'll confront their sin, right? I'm like,
right.
I don't know. That seemed like there were some Pharisees really eager to do that kind of stuff in the pages of the Gospels. I'm not sure that's the wisest move. So,
but Paul does that.
Yeah, most of the sins that he's confronting in his letters are sins of power moves that are always made with like Bible verses attached to them. They're, typically when people do make these moves of power, they situate themselves or their group or their agenda as the godly agenda or the godly group. And if the other group, the ungodly group, would just adopt our agenda or get on our side, then God's purposes would be produced. And this is why Paul situates himself on that other side. Like he's the sinner. Like, so he's the ungodly. He's the unrighteous. He's the felon. He's the outcast. He's the one who's lowest on the social totem pole. He's not the godly one. He's not the one who's on the inside.
But hold on a second. Hold on a second. Tim, and I love you for this. I love you that an uncircumcised Philistine like myself, that's a metaphor, can ask questions. But I look at Paul's comments about the immoral, obviously in 1 Corinthians 5, the immoral brother. And there is an authority he claims there, that he has already judged the person. So just square that with cruciformity, right? Because, and you deal with this at the end of the book, and I love that, because you're not saying, well, we're just passive doormats.
No, never.
And you have a chapter about that, which is huge. But reconcile that, Paul, because I think some, particularly of a Reformed persuasion, will be, well, no, Paul's calling out sin all the time. He's not, and in this case, he's calling for the forceful ejection of somebody from the community. How does that all square?
Yeah, it seems to me that there's got to be some kind of, I got to go back and look at Thistleton on this. He brings a lot of this out in 1 Corinthians. A lot of the sins that are being committed in Corinth have to do with some kind of like exploitation and oppression and some kind of class elevation.
Totally. The Lord's Supper, for sure.
Yeah.
The favorites.
And I'm trying to think through, I need to go back and look at 1 Corinthians 5 and the wording.
Yeah, no worries.
But I think that there's something about that dynamic that we too easily see in terms of force or in terms of, elevation, like taking a place of authority and doing some kind of like condemning.
Right.
I rather think that it's like sort of cruciform nerve or like insistence. So taking our place as a cross-shaped community and insisting on that as a people that don't look out for their own needs and desires, or even like, and put on the cross their own sinful desires, and inviting other people to participate in our community on those same terms. And if there are people that don't, that sort of step away from that posture and become self-seeking, the cross-shaped community has to have the cruciform nerve to call people to sort of retake their position shaped by the cross. And if they will not do that, the cruciform community, and this is part of the cruciform responsible care, leadership has to sort of rally the community to see that this person has left their place on the cross and therefore has surrendered the joy and delight of being a community member. So yeah, I think I'd rather put it in terms of like cruciform nerve rather than like taking a place, like when the stakes get really high, then leadership can get off their cross and do some condemning. I see it as like remaining on the cross, crucifying our own fears of addressing a situation like that, crucifying our own guarantee of a good outcome in any kind of a confrontation. But calling people to return to the cross if they become self-seeking, and if they don't respond to those calls, the grievous responsibility of a community will have to be to put that person outside the community until they see the promise of retaking their position on the cross, along with the rest of the cruciform community.
Right. Boy, that so good in theory.
Oh, it's brutal.
I've hardly ever seen that.
It can happen. I haven't. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it very rarely tried, like 3 or 4 times. But it bears great fruit, because if you approach situations of conflict, which we always do, from places of strength,
right,
you will end up cornering somebody, or you end up condemning, or you end up putting somebody's back against the wall. You typically imagine entering a situation of conflict by looking around at all the leverage that you have that you can use against a person, instead of like approaching a person from absolute weakness, giving up all leverage at the start, and adopting a posture of invitation. Because then you will open yourself up to being hurt. But you also, what's so important about that is, if you approach a situation of conflict from a place of strength, you eliminate the possibility that God can show up to redeem. But if you approach a conflict situation from a place of weakness, you clear space for God to show up. And also, that's your strongest self. Like, it's so important to keep this in mind. In 2 Corinthians 12, Paul does not say, I was joking with somebody. I was joking about this recently, because I think that if I said to you in 2 Corinthians 12, Paul says, when I am weak, then God is strong. I think most people would assume that's what Paul says.
Right.
But he says, when I am weak, I am strong. So we show up with our best self when we show up with our cruciform self. Because we marginalize, we bring forward our we're not afraid of our weakness, and we're not putting up our armor. And we by doing that, we invite other people to participate in a conflict situation from their best self. And we allow resurrection power to enter in and bring about restoration and healing. I mean, I've seen it rarely. Usually those meetings have been long and painful, but at the end, I remember one situation where an hour in, I thought, it's over. Like, this is, we brought our knives to this fight. And I'll never forget, about an hour in, I had a friend. This is so unusual. He just said, he took a total step of vulnerability and just said, okay, I think I'm hearing you, and I think I'm wrong, but I don't feel good right now, but I think I need to hear what you're saying. And that melted everybody. Like, everybody rushed in to like give each other deference. And it was like, people cried and embraced and like made resolutions to change things. And we did. Like, people changed the way they were participating in a certain ministry. It was awesome. Wow. But that's rare. We just leave a church, or we just, fire somebody, or, whatever, or denounce somebody. That's a lot easier.
Oh, Timothy, this is so good. My goodness.
And I so appreciate you guys. I always love hanging out.
It's so fun. Thanks for your time. Tim Stafford, any last thoughts?
No, I'd love to do a part 2 sequel, because I think the cosmological conversation is, we do a lot of like the kind of the, or lately, I guess with the Sermon on the Mount, it feels like we're doing a lot of like the practicality of the church, and the practicality of ministry, and the practicality of like humble, a humble nature and whatnot. But the cosmological stuff is kind of interesting and is not talked about as much. The spiritual things that are at play. I think we have that conversation sometimes off mic, and it's always kind of like a confrontational conversation, because some people don't want to have any conversation about a spiritual nature at play, like spiritual forces at play in what we're doing. And then there's people that are like overly spiritual warfare, like everything is so, but I think it's interesting. And I know you spent some time on that in here. It would be interesting to do like a follow-up that's really based in the cosmos.
Yeah, would love it.
Well, for those of you interested, as a step in that direction, Tim Gombis hosts Faith Improvised, a podcast you can find at your favorite podcast provider. Definitely not Amazon though. And it's a joke if you've listened to the podcast.
The beast. They're the manifestation of everything that's wrong in the cosmos.
Anyway, Tim did a whole episode on the powers and principalities. That is an excellent overview and summary that's not oversimplified, but really good, but accessible, about the powers and principalities and the way they are conceived of in the scriptures. So that really is worth your time, because it's far different from this present darkness, Neil Anderson kind of spiritual warfare stuff I grew up with.
Oh yeah.
I mean, really, really different. And it puts into context why my moral struggles are not, they're not transgressions of an arbitrary law, but they're parts of a web that introduces or furthers perpetuates the cycles of destruction.
Yeah.
At a cosmic level.
Are you saying that our prayers do not charge angels' batteries in their war against the demonic presence in small towns?
Who's to say?
Wasn't that the premise of Peretti's book?
I don't know. Straper put it best. To hell with the devil. So that's all.
Dude,
that's all we
calling on all the Christian pop cultural realities, man. The best.
Oh, well, Tim, thank you, dude.
You guys are the best. Thank you. I love it. Always fun to hang out.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erre. Thank you for walking this road with us.